What's up, guys? Welcome back to the From the Sideline podcast with Francis
and Peter, and today we have our first episode in probably about a month, I'd say, and it's a huge episode. We missed a ton of stuff, so we're going to get caught back up and then some. So the agenda for today, we're going to start with the Seahawks, then we're going to move on to the Pro Bowl selections that got announced today, then we're going to talk about the Heisman and MVP races, then the playoffs, and then finally we're going to touch on the college football playoff.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you follow and hit the notification bell and listen to all our future episodes to come. So let's get right into it. So starting off with the Seahawks.
Yeah.
You want to start?
Yeah. Okay, so obviously let's address the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is the Seahawks getting eliminated from the playoffs via a bunch of really unfortunate series of events with the Rams beating the Cardinals last second, and then all of those games that helped them clinch the strength of victory tiebreaker, which was pretty brutal to watch. But at the end of the day, you just can't leave it up to another team. You have to control your own destiny. And from what we saw in that Thursday night game, the 6-3 win over the Bears, I mean, that was just like rock bottom, pathetic, even though it was a win. I mean, you put up 6 points on the 2024 Chicago Bears team, you do not deserve to go to the playoffs. But, yeah, the second half of the season, Geno Smith just absolutely crumbled. The decision-making, like every game he had 2 or 3 turnover-worthy plays, and it's almost always in the red zone. Like that play against the Bears, he didn't technically throw an interception, but he threw it right into his hands.
Yeah.
Vikings game, that's why we lost. They're 14-2 team. That proves that we can compete. But when you have a quarterback who turns it over in the red zone so consistently and is just like whenever he gets nervous, and I know I'm not speaking just for myself, there's a lot of Seahawks fans who also feel this way. Like when he drops back in the pocket in the red zone, you get super nervous because you don't know what he's going to do with the football, and he's too inconsistent to really get somewhere with as a franchise. So what I think we need to do is we really need to make a change at quarterback, among other things, which Francis and I will discuss later, but that's the main thing in the offseason. Geno's a good quarterback. He's done a lot for this franchise, but we just can't go far with him, and especially with this sort of regression, that's what I would call it, that we've seen in this probably the second half of the season, which has just been absolutely brutal.
First off, I just want to make the point of how the Seahawks just really played at the level of their opponent. Like Peter said, we were competitive with the Vikings, who are one of the best teams in the league, and then the next week we almost lose to the Bears and only score 6 points. We just dropped 24 against a really good Vikings defense, which is really sad. We're not one of those elite teams that is consistently good. We just always play to the level to our opponent. But our defense, I just want to say, was a really strong point of this season, and we showed really great signs on the defensive side of the ball. Mike McDonald really held it down for us on the defensive side of the ball. Devin Witherspoon stepping up, Leonard Williams, just a lot of guys stepping up and holding the Bears to 3 points. It was a really great way to cap off the season for the defense. But offensively is where we struggled towards the end of the season. And yeah, part of that's on Geno, but I sort of disagree with Peter. I think Geno obviously at times he was pretty bad, his decision-making in the red zone especially, but behind that offensive line, there's not much he could do. We have a bottom 5 offensive line in the NFL, and Geno Smith was still able to be top 5 in passing yards and had a decent completion percentage, was making the right reads, was overall pretty accurate thrower of the ball, and we weren't really utilizing our receivers enough because, we have someone as talented as DK Metcalf who didn't produce to the level that he normally does. And I think part of it, if not most of it, is on our OC Ryan Grubb. And I know Peter doesn't really agree with me on this take, but he needs to go. He's not NFL ready. He was a good college offensive coordinator, but he just proved that he's not cut out for the league just yet. And, we ran the ball against I think it was, I don't remember.
The Rams, I think.
No, it was I think it was the Vikings. In the second half, we only ran the ball twice.
And it was the run game was working. So what I think is that obviously this was not a great first year for Grubb. He looked really good early on in the season, but down the stretch, the problem, it wasn't even really the plays that were like just the plays in general. Like it was way more creative than what Shane Waldron drew up. We saw how it activated Jason. It's just finding a balance in run and pass plays.
Yeah.
He just could not find a way. And like we saw, the run game was practically non-existent in the second half. Kenneth Walker, whenever he was healthy, it just had nothing to do. And then Charbonnet, he would have a bunch of good carries, and then they would just not give him the ball. So I do agree with Francis on that. But I don't think you can just move on from Grubb after 1 year, because it's not just like it really disrupts a franchise like when you do that, and you need multiple years to kind of implement your system. And I do think during the offseason he's going to find a better way, so I don't think you can just can him after 1 year, because that doesn't really give him a fair shot, and who knows if the next guy is going to have the same problem as he does right now.
Well, I'm coming to the point where the Seahawks are, next season we're really in like win now mode. We don't have much time we have so many assets that are in the last year of the contracts and stuff, and I'm not going to sit around here and just wait for Ryan Grubb to, prove that he's a good offensive coordinator, because he's had a whole season to do that, and it actually got worse towards the end of the season, which doesn't really make much sense. We have two really talented running backs, a top 5 running back duo in the league with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and we just weren't able to utilize them at all. On first down, you should be running the ball most of the time in certain situations, especially like in the red zone, but we were just seeming to like throw it on all third downs and then just go 3 and out, or in the red zone too, just throw it on all 3 downs and then just settle for a field goal, or Geno Smith gets picked off or something. But you need to run the ball more, and an offense can't produce in the pass game unless they are producing in the run game as well, because defenses can just scheme against their pass. If they're not running the ball, then it's so easy for them to just drop back in coverage and just focus on the pass. But if you're producing in the run game as well, then the defense has to stay on their heels or on their toes, and we just weren't able to run the ball at all, which is I would say like at least 70% of the reason why our offense struggled so much, and Geno was under so much pressure, and also just our offensive line was terrible. So the changes I would like to see in this offseason are Ryan Grubb out and bolstering up our offensive line like severely. In the draft, I think we should really focus on offensive line. At least 3 of our picks should be offensive line.
Trey Smith.
Our first round pick should definitely be offensive line, unless a good edge is available. Then I'm down for that. But going into free agency and being aggressive for offensive linemen is going to be really important in the draft. And everything besides that, I feel like we're looking pretty good.
What I feel is that like Mike McDonald is such a defensive guru that I don't think we need to worry a ton on that side of the ball, because like we've seen how much he can develop players. Like one of the things that showcases the most is you just look at the Ravens defense this year. It's regressed so much, especially the linebackers. Like Roquan Smith is having probably the worst season of his career. Definitely his worst season with the Ravens. I know he's only had like 2.5 so far, but by far he's not having a good year at all. I don't know how he made the Pro Bowl, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, Mike McDonald's an absolute guru. We saw how good Tyrese Knight played in probably his first game, which is really hard to get a linebacker to play like that. But I do agree with what Francis said, signing offensive line free agents and drafting offensive line, preferably signing free agents, like signing a big free agent like Trey Smith, for example. We saw a proposal on that, and we're both really intrigued by it. But one of the things I've been pondering for like about a month is just looking at all the good teams in the NFL and seeing kind of what they have in common. And I know I just said like the defense, we don't need to worry about that too much, but this is just something I've been thinking about. Like every good team has an elite edge rusher almost, or an elite cornerstone defensive player, I'd say, a linebacker or a defensive lineman that's at least a decent defense that's in the playoffs. So most of them are decent. Like I'm just thinking of even like the Bengals, who are a fringe playoff team. Their defense is absolutely horrible, but they have one good player, and he's still like he's probably one of the most impactful defensive players in the NFL, Trey Hendrickson, and he's just like that just proves how impactful a defensive lineman can be. And when I see these players in the draft, like Abdul Carter and then Jared Verse last year, I know they're not really on different levels, or they're on different levels. Abdul Carter's obviously a better prospect, but it's just so hard to see one of those guys and then like you see those guys come in and year out, and then you never do anything to try and get them, and you just stay at this level of mediocrity, which I feel like is why a lot of fans are so frustrated. Because I'm just thinking, like, imagine if the Seahawks had a Micah Parsons or a Myles Garrett, and it's not like I'm saying we should go get one of those guys, but that would bolster our team so much. We would have won at least 2 more games just because of one player. So I think that's something to think about in the future. Just kind of trying to focus in on gaining like a really big star player, because they just win you games, quite frankly, and it's way easier to get one of them than to get a ton of good defensive players, because you only have to pay them once. You don't have to pay them like as much as you have to pay a ton of different defensive back salary or a ton of different linebacker salary. You just have to pay them one big salary.
Yeah, and I was just telling Peter that I'd be ready for us to trade up to get Abdul Carter. I don't care how much we have to give up because it's honestly worth it. He's a bona fide star already, and he's a lock to be a superstar in the NFL, unless he gets injured. But, I mean, obviously you can't assume that somebody's going to get injured. But, yeah, the only really bright spot, like superstar that's coming out of our defense right now is Spoon, and we just need somebody in the front 7 to be like that, because as much as the secondary can do, the front 7 really is probably more impactful than the secondary on the defensive side of the ball.
I agree with that.
And we really don't have much of a presence right now besides Leonard Williams, and interior defensive linemen don't impact the game as much as edge rushers.
I did want to discuss Byron Murphy. You want to?
Oh, yeah. We were just talking about him, about how he's a potential bust.
Yeah, it's been a pretty disappointing rookie season. He had 0 sacks. I know he had that one that got taken back by a penalty. And I think the Vikings game was either the Vikings game or the Bears game. But yeah, pretty disappointing pick. And he's just not been very good at all.
Because he's like kind of a Justin Madubuike prototype. And we saw how Mike McDonald worked with him. And he's a back-to-back Pro Bowler now. He went from nothing to that. And we thought Byron Murphy was going to be like the same way. But he just hasn't panned out to be that way. He's not even in the game for most of the snaps on defense. So,
yeah, I mean, being the defensive tackle too, it just like there's so many other ways we could have went. And then I know hindsight's 2020, but you see Jared Verse and like I picture that on the Seahawks team. And then who else was available?
I think Chop Robinson went right.
Chop Robinson,
but
I think he was actually available after.
Yeah, maybe.
Chop Robinson. Like, it's just really brutal to think about. And then there's O-linemen as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for the Seahawks. We'll discuss that later on, especially in the offseason, kind of honing out what specifically we want to do. But now we're going to talk about the Pro Bowl. The selections got announced today. Well, we're just going to go through right now. First off, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks, see if we have any problems with those. So from the NFC, we have Jaden Daniels, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff.
Those are all good to me.
Those are all good. I agree with that. And then from the AFC, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I know it's pretty crazy leaving out Mahomes, but with the seasons those three are having, it's just you just can't put them in, even though the Chiefs are 15-1. I saw Nick Wright on Fox got super angry about this.
Bro,
he is the biggest Mahomes glazer.
Yeah.
So there should be no outrage for this. I mean, it's just one simple look at the stat sheet.
And that's insane that the AFC quarterbacks are like that much better than the NFC quarterbacks. Like it's the top 3 quarterbacks in the league, and then there's also Herbert and Mahomes. So the top 5 quarterbacks are all in the AFC. Which is insane to think about.
Okay, for the running backs in the NFC, we have Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Josh Jacobs.
That's all good.
Yeah, I know there's Bijan Robinson had a great season. I think you could argue him in for Jacobs. But
no, Josh Jacobs had an amazing season though.
Yeah. Okay, and then for the AFC, we have Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor. I actually do not agree with Taylor here.
Really? Yeah. I like that pick. Who would you take over him?
Who would I? I'm blanking right now.
Like Najee had a solid season.
Not Najee. Yeah, James Cook, I think he deserves it. He had less yards, but, I mean, you could definitely argue that he's more impactful for his team. He had 5 yards per carry, and Taylor was just, like, he looks pretty good on the stat sheet, but he actually hasn't had a very good season. If you look at the analytics, I know PFF really doesn't like him. But Joe Mixon, I do agree with that. Even though his yards per carry is pretty low, he's super impactful for his team. And, like, I don't think yards per carry is as sort of black and white as, like, Kyron Williams, Joe Mixon. Those guys, they just run it into the face of the defense.
And also the Texans' O-line is, like, bottom one.
And so. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of those guys who has a higher yards per carry, but he's not. They don't run him straight into the defense. So I do agree with the picks besides Taylor for those ones. You could argue Bijan. And then fullbacks, we're not going to talk about that. Wide receivers. So from the NFC, we have Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Those are obviously all good.
Fortunately, JSN didn't make it, but, I mean, those are all pretty good. And then from the AFC, we have Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Zay Flowers, and Jerry Jeudy. I agree with Jamar Chase and Jerry Jeudy. Nico, you could argue, he missed a lot of time. But Brian Thomas Jr. is kind
you
of
cannot snub Brian Thomas Jr.
And then, so, Zay Flowers for Thomas.
Not even just, like, rookie bias. Like, he was 4th in receiving yards. He has all the tools that you need in a receiver. He's 6'4". He can do anything that all these receivers can do. Mm-hmm. And besides, like, obviously, like, Jamar and Justin Jefferson. But I think he can do anything that, like, Terry McLaurin can do, if not better.
Yeah.
Like, he's not fast.
I am a Nico Collins believer, but in terms of the season, he really fell off at the end, and then he missed 4 games. So you could argue Ladd for him, but I'm not too opposed to that. And
definitely
then for the
not Zay,
NFC, one thing I forgot is that, like, this is kind of going to sound a little biased because I am a big fan of his, but you could for sure switch Malik Neighbors in for Terry McLaurin. He missed 2 games, and if he didn't miss those 2 games, he probably would be third in receiving, not probably, would be third in receiving yards. He's only 54 away from CeeDee Lamb, who has the third most receiving yards. He missed 4 games not 4 games, 2 games. But yeah, I just love him so much. He's such a good receiver, and thriving on that Giants offense is absolutely impossible. So we're really looking forward to what I can see from him in the future.
Do you think him or JSN had the better season?
I mean, I don't even think you can compare them because of the situation Malik is in.
And they're like different positions.
Yeah, very different receivers.
I would, as much as I'm a Seahawks fan, I would low-key say Neighbors.
Yeah, and Malik has really impressed me. Okay, for the tight ends, we have George Kittle and Trey McBride, and then Brock Bowers and Travis Kelce.
Those are all
I agree with the NFC. AFC, I would switch Jonnu Smith for Travis Kelce.
No.
Yes.
As much as Travis Kelce's having an off season, it's still a really good tight end season. And Jonnu Smith, I think he's been solid, and he's been like utilized so well in the Dolphin system, but he still hasn't even had that great of a season.
I mean, he's better than Travis Kelce in every single statistic. So I did want to. It's not too egregious because that's pretty close, and Kelce's obviously super important to the Chiefs. But I just want to give Jonnu a little shout out because he's had a really impressive season. Okay, for the tackles, do you want to go over the O-line?
Let me see. Okay, so we got in the NFC Lane Johnson, Penei Sewell, Tristan Wirfs. So automatically, Peter was talking about it before the podcast.
Yeah, Jordan Mailata absolutely deserves. He's been the best tackle in the NFL this season.
Lane Johnson is just like a name value at this point. He's a veteran who's always like all pro.
So Mailata in for
Lane Johnson.
I agree with Sewell. I agree with Tristan Wirfs.
AFC, we have Deion Dawkins, Rashawn Slater, and Laramie Tunsil.
Actually,
these are all solid, but there was somebody I had over Deion Dawkins.
I had in the NFC, I forgot to say, I have Teron Armstead in for Tristan Wirfs. He's had a really good season. I think he's just gotten no love for it, but he's probably been one of the 5 best tackles in the NFL this season.
Yeah. And then moving on to centers, they're all good. Cam Jurgens in the NFC and Frank Ragnow.
I actually don't agree with Jurgens.
Oh, actually, the Cardinals center has been super good. I don't really know how to pronounce the name. It's like Froholt or something, but he's been really good this season. And I think he got it over Jurgens. But AFC, Creed Humphrey, Tyler Linderbaum, obviously. Okay, guards in the NFC. For me, it's looking all good. Landon Dickerson, Chris Lindstrom, Tyler Smith. That seems fine to me.
I agree with that.
AFC, Quentin Nelson, Trey Smith, Joe Thuney. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
That's insane. The Chiefs have two guards.
Chiefs and Eagles are just infested in the Super Bowl. That's part of the reason why
I was going to say that when we were talking about the Seahawks, but like when you were saying that all the good teams have in common is like an elite edge rusher or like linebacker or something, cornerstone defensive guy. All elite teams have an elite offensive line too. Like the Chiefs, the Eagles.
The Eagles' offensive line and the Chiefs' both offensive lines are just absolutely nutty. The Eagles is insane. It works so well for their offense.
The Lions, the Steelers.
Lions have an amazing offensive line. Steelers.
Every single elite team you can think of
Commanders'
that's a Super Bowl
O-line
contender
is really underrated.
Yeah, and the Vikings O-line is solid. It's just, and the Packers have a really good offensive line as well.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the defensive side of the ball. NFC for edge rushers, we have Nick Bosa, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary. Those are all completely fine with me.
Yep, I agree with that. Rashawn Gary is super underrated player. AFC, we have Myles Garrett, Trey Henderson, Max Crosby. Just want to give a quick thing. It's not edge rushers, it's defensive end, so TJ Watt is listed as an outside linebacker for this. But Myles Garrett been the best defensive player in the NFL this season.
Should be Depoy front runner.
Depoy again. Trey Henderson, we talked about him. I agree with that. And then Max Crosby, such an underrated run stuffer.
Yeah.
Like whenever I see film or I watch the game, watch a Raiders game, he's just absolutely tearing it up, and he doesn't take any plays off. So love him.
But honestly, I think he didn't deserve to make it this year. He's had like a really off season, and there's other guys like really underrated. Edge rusher is a position where like super underrated guys can have like an insane season. Like Zach Allen has had a really good season, and I think Danielle Hunter deserves to be over.
Oh yeah,
Max Crosby. He's had an insane season. We know he was like elite on the Vikings. He was like the leader in sacks and stuff, and then doing it for the Texans this season. He's been really holding it down for the Texans defense. Been the veteran there, the leader.
Yeah, and then Aiden Hutchinson would have made it. He's had the best season of his career.
Nasty injury.
Yeah. Interior linemen for the NFC, we have Jalen Carter, Dexter Lawrence, Vita Vea. I agree with Dexter and Vita. There was someone I was missing. It's someone instead of Vita. Oh, Leonard Williams. Yeah, Leonard Williams.
Yeah, Leonard Williams is...
You put him in over Vita Vea or Jalen Carter.
Bro, he's honestly maybe even having a better season than Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah.
And Dexter Lawrence is like easily the best interior defensive lineman in the game.
Chris Jones is still doing it.
Oh, yeah. But this season, I think Dexter Lawrence has been the best interior defensive lineman in the game. But you can make an argument that Leonard Williams is right there with him. And Leonard Williams, I think he's going to make it because Dexter Lawrence is injured, so he's going to get him as an alternate. But, I mean, we know the Pro Bowl is a popularity contest at the end of the day, and Leonard Williams has been just on a losing team, didn't make the playoffs, and then he's been on the Jets and the Giants, so, like, he's not a huge name anymore. He's kind of old, too, but he's just been having such a great season, and, yeah.
Yeah. And then for the AFC, we have Cameron Hayward. I agree with that. Chris Jones, I agree with that. And then Justin Matabuke, or Nnamdi Matabuke, as he's known now. I actually don't agree with
I don't agree with that
I agree
either.
with Jeffrey Simmons over him. I would probably put one of the most underrated linemen in the NFL.
Yeah. Like we were talking about with Mike McDonald leaving the Ravens, Matabuke has really been dealing with the repercussions of that. He's been not having a great season this year. It's just kind of like I said, popularity contest because he was so great last season.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a really big hater of him. I think he's one of the most overrated players in the NFL. Okay, outside linebackers for the NFC, Jonathan Grenard having by far the most underrated season in the NFL. As an edge rusher, he's been absolutely insane for the Vikings, tearing it up. And then Andrew Van Ginkel for the Vikings again, and then Jared Verse for the Rams. We talked about Jared Verse. It's kind of crazy that he's making it in his rookie season, but I probably agree with that.
No, for sure.
And then it's hard to think about what they're defining outside linebackers as.
I would not think of Jared Verse as an outside linebacker.
Yeah, and Andrew Van Ginkel having a super
he's
season.
A sneaky, like, I could see him. Like, he's not going to win Depoy, but I think he deserves a shout. Yeah. He's been having a really great season for the Vikings.
And then AFC, Nick Bonito,
TJ
Watt, Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is debatable, but
No, he's been having a good season.
He's been having a good season, but the outside linebacker / edge, it kind of makes it.
Well, he's always been like kind of classified as an outside linebacker.
Yeah,
so.
but it would be hard to, if you just smush this into one, then it would.
Yeah, that's like for every position, there's like 2 or 3 guys that make it, and then like edge rusher, they're really kind of make like 6.
Yeah, like Nick Bonito's more of an actual traditional.
Yeah, same with like Van Ginkel.
Same with Van Ginkel, and then Jared Burson, Khalil Mack, and T.J. Watt are edge rushers.
I just want to shout Nick Bonito. Like he's actually like he's not gonna win either, but he's actually a sneaky deep boy shout. He's been having such a great season.
And then one thing I want to say, this is kind of a random interjection, but I heard John Gruden talking about this with Barstool. He asked Big Cat, he said name as many players as you can on the Denver defense, and he could only name 2.
Pat Surtain.
Pat Surtain, I think he said Pat Surtain, Nick Bonito, but yeah, Riley Moss. There's other ones, but Cooper, but there's the linebacker.
Cody Barton.
Yeah. But, I mean, he's right. They're just silent killers, and they've been absolutely tearing up this season. So, quick shout-out to them. Then, for inside it / middle linebackers, NFC, Fred Warner, Zach Bond. Agree with that. Zach Bond's been having a great season. AFC, Roquan Smith, Zaire Franklin. Don't agree with Roquan.
Yeah.
Yeah. One person I was thinking of was Nick Bolton on the Chiefs, and then also C.J. Mosley on the Jets, and then maybe Azeez Al-Shaair on the Texans having a pretty underrated season.
Oh, yeah, Azeez Al-Shaair.
Everyone just remembers the dirty hit on Trevor Lawrence. So they're all pretty. AFC is definitely the weaker division for linebackers, but what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say the 2 Chiefs linebackers. One of them deserved to be in, Nick Bolton or Leo Chenal. They both had really good seasons, and they're honestly the reason. Those 2 guys are the reason why the Chiefs defense has been performing so well. The leaders in the middle who are just been great leaders and communicating really well. Roquan Smith, like we said, has had a very down year, and Zaire Franklin is just not he's not an elite linebacker. So, I mean, it's really a toss-up.
Yeah.
Obviously, Roquan was going to make it, though, because of name brand, but moving on.
Yeah, moving on to cornerbacks. From the NFC, we have Jalen Johnson, Byron Murphy Jr., J.C. Horn, and Devin Witherspoon. Love to see Spoon there, but the one person I would switch out is I would switch Byron Murphy for Cooper DeJean. Just having such an outstanding rookie season, and I was a little unsure in the beginning in the draft process, but he's for sure proved all the haters wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna say switch out Byron Murphy for either of the 2 Eagles corners because they've both been phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm more of a DeJean guy. Just like
me
I've
too.
seen Quinyon get burned a little more.
Quinyon Mitchell though he's really proved me wrong. I mean, I was a little skeptical of him. He was pretty raw, just like straight athleticism. He was kind of like Rick Rowland, but he's really proved me wrong. He's been technically very solid and just not what I expected his rookie season to look like. And Cooper DeJean, I was also a little skeptical, but I was more confident about him being good because he's just so talented and he's such a superb athlete and he's so...
Yeah, he was either going to do well at corner or safety, and it just happened that cornerback worked out.
Exactly. Like, he could play either position, which just makes him so versatile, and he knows the game so well, and such an athlete for a white guy, so...
Yeah. And then from the AFC, we have Derek Stingley, Pat Surtain, Marlon Humphrey, Denzel Ward. The one thing I would swap out, which is low-key just super egregious, is Denzel Ward in for Trent McDuffie. McDuffie's having the second best cornerback season in the NFL by far. If Patrick Surtain was not in the NFL, he would for sure be having probably one of the best seasons in recent history. I mean, he has just been going off for the Chiefs season, holding it down. Just so good in man and zone. And then Stingley, I agree with. And then Marlon Humphrey, it's a little debatable, but I think it's okay to put him there. But Denzel Ward, that's just pure name value in my opinion.
Trent McDuffie, he doesn't really pop off on the stat sheet, and so he's not really posted that much or not just like a big play kind of guy. Like Denzel Ward, we know who he is. He's a big name. He was a high draft pick and really great at Ohio State, and then comes out and already becomes elite. But Trent McDuffie has had kind of a quieter career, but he's been elite in every season he's played. Coming out of UW as a first-round pick, one of our Washington guys, and he's just been an absolute lockdown corner. I think he's had the highest lockdown rate out of any corner in the NFL. And I would put him over Denzel Ward as well, because Marlon Humphrey is he's like a Swiss Army knife. More of his
super physical,
almost like a linebacker than a cornerback. He plays at that nickel position a lot, and he blitzes a ton. He is in the slot a lot, and isn't really on the outside playing man-to-man with the wide number one receiver most of the time. And he's really, to me, when I watch the Ravens defense and how great they are, I mean, they haven't been that great in the passing game, and they're having a down season, but he's the biggest reason why they are so elite. Him and Kyle Hamilton are really just holding it down for them. And yeah, he's so versatile and also not really popping off in the stat sheet, but he's a big name as well, and he really deserves it.
Okay, for safeties from the NFC, we have Budda Baker and Brian Branch. Actually, probably. I mean, I guess you could argue Budda. I don't think Budda. Okay, well, I'm going to address the first problem. Brian Branch, they picked the wrong line safety.
Yeah.
Kirby Joseph is the best safety in the NFL this season, and that's not just me watching interceptions. He is. He's been having an absolutely superb season. Super good in zone. He's a hard hitter. Obviously, there have been some accusations about him being dirty, but he's still, those are, he's just a good tackler, old school tackler. And then Budda Baker, this is going to maybe be a little Husky bias, but he's so good for that Cardinals team.
No, that's not biased.
And their secondary isn't the best, but he's just a physical safety who's really good in coverage, and he's clearly just the leader of that defense.
Yeah, he's literally the only bright spot on their defense, and you see him moving from sideline to sideline with such speed, and he never gets tired. He's a hard hitter. He's so good at recognizing runs or passes, and gets to the ball. You see his motor, and you see how passionate he is for the game just by the way he plays. I mean, we have to face him twice a year as the Seahawks fan, and he's just such a menace to go against, and you can't not vote him into the Pro Bowl. He's proved time and time again that he's an elite safety, one of the best in the league since he came in out of UW, and he's been the reason why the Cardinals defense has actually been kind of underrated this season. But I don't get it wrong. Brian Branch is still a very good safety, almost elite at this point. But yeah, Kirby Joseph definitely deserves to make it over him, and it's hard because at times they've been neck and neck, but Kirby Joseph has just proven that he's been better this season overall. So
yeah. And then from the AFC, we have Kyle Hamilton and Derwin James. I agree with that. The one thing I could say, I actually wrote this down because, I was talking about the Broncos earlier, you kind of forget some of their names. Strong safeties. Sorry, I didn't specify that. Brandon Jones, the safety of the Broncos, having an absolutely amazing season. I'm not going to lie, I didn't know a ton about him until a few weeks ago. But just looking at the analytics and then looking at his stats and coverage, it's just been absolutely amazing. And he's part of the reason why they have been so killer and their secondary has been so good.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put him over Derwin James.
I think he's having a really good season, so I wanted to.
Yeah, he deserves a shout for sure.
And then free safeties, Xavier McKinney from the NFC, I agree with that. And then Minka from the AFC, we actually both disagree with that. Sort of just a name value pick, I would say.
Yeah, who would you put over him?
Actually, upon further confirmation, I realized that Brandon Jones is a free safety, so I would for sure put him in over Minka. I think Francis agrees with that. Minka not having a good season at all. That's a pure fan vote, name value, ignorance type of vote. And then I guess we can just
wait. Before we move on, I just want to say, I agree with the Brandon Jones pick, but also in the NFC, I mean, Xavier McKinney's having an amazing season. But I might want to put Jesse Bates over him. He is phenomenal.
I'm a big Jesse Bates guy.
I'm a huge Jesse Bates guy. He was amazing on the Bengals.
And they really have regretted letting him walk.
The Falcons have so many elite. They have Justin Simmons as well. I completely forgot about that. That safety duo is insane. Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons, who are, if you talked about that last year, those are the two best free safeties in the NFL.
Justin Simmons has had a little bit of a fall off.
For sure.
Yeah.
But Jesse Bates has really held down. I think
their defense is. That just proves how unimportant the safety position is because their defense is still absolutely garbage.
Well, it's also because, like we were saying, front seven is more important, and their front seven is terrible, like god awful. They're like least in sacks and least in pressures, I think. So, but yeah, Jesse Bates, I think he's the best safety in the league. So I would have him over Xavier McKinney.
McKinney is having a really good season.
I mean, he definitely deserves a shout. So.
And then just gonna have some fun with these ones. Kickers, Brandon Aubrey, and then a secret that he's best kicker in the NFL this season. Sure. And then Chris Boswell in the FC having an absolute resurgence season. And then kick returners, Kevontae Turpin.
For sure.
You guys all saw the Commanders game. It was just an absolutely amazing return. And the AFC, Marvin Mims Jr., I know he's been a pretty good kick returner, but just in terms of, as a player, he's been having a really good sophomore season. I really like the speed in him and Bo Nix in recent weeks. They've started to develop a connection. That touchdown we're both really big Bo Nix haters, but in the Browns game, that was also an insane touchdown, the deep one. But in the Bengals, it was just an absolute dart. Probably the best throw of the 2024 season.
Well, that's just easily the best throw of his career. And that was the first throw I've seen him be that accurate where it was over 15 yards.
It was an absolute
Well, I guess the one
missile,
90-yard touchdown in the Browns game.
But landed right in the breadbasket. Then punters, NFC Jack Fox. No.
Michael Dixon.
He's the best punter in the NFL.
He's actually had such a good season this year. He kind of regressed the past few seasons, but this season he's been elite. He places it inside the 10-yard line every single time. I think I only saw him hit one, maybe two touchbacks this entire season, which is insane.
Yeah, and then AFC Logan Cook on the Jags. I guess I agree with that. And then special teamers. We're not gonna even pretend like we know. Long snappers also not gonna pretend like we know. Shout out to Tabor Pepper on the 49ers for getting their season ruined by getting pushed by Debo. But that's just a quick shout. I don't know if he actually deserved it. There's not really a whole lot that goes into that position. Okay, the next thing that's on our agenda is we're going to talk about the MVP. Okay. Sort of. I guess there's three people. I guess there's three people in contention right now. Saquon's officially out of it. What a great season from him, though. Deserves.
Is he officially out of it?
Yeah. 2,000 yards, but he's not.
He's obviously not going to win, but
he's not going to play on Sunday. But Offensive Player of the Year season.
For sure.
He deserves it. And then, okay, so let's talk about the big three: Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson deserves the MVP. That's what I'm going to say. Watch a Ravens game. I'm telling you, watch a Ravens game. You'll just see how insane this man is. I know some of you were watching on Christmas. I think he threw a touchdown to Isaiah Likely, but it's absolutely just an average Lamar play. He runs all the way over there. He runs all the way towards the sideline, then he turns around, and then he turns around again, and then he just throws a dart. He's so patient, and he's so good. And then he just takes off for 40-yard touchdowns. That 40-yard touchdown he had looked like he was jogging. He said he was jogging.
And
he reached 22 miles per hour.
That's insane.
It's absolutely absurd. And then Joe Burrow, the stat sheet, man, he's just absolutely filled it up. The connection with Jamar has been super special to watch this season. And T. Higgins having an absolutely insane run down the stretch, especially in the fantasy playoffs. But then Josh Allen, he's kind of the odd man out. The only reason he's really in it, I would say, is because he's having a phenomenal season. But it's voter fatigue. No one wants to vote for Lamar because he's won it a bunch. Or 2 times. And then no one wants to vote for Burrow because his team sucks, which I agree with. You have to have at least decent team, and they're probably not even going to make the playoffs. They had a 1% chance at one point, but now they've come back to 8-8. But then Josh Allen, the only reason he's still in it is just because it feels like a Josh Allen year. He hasn't won one yet, and it feels like it. But the stats and the eye test, nothing says he deserves the MVP. But he still had a great season, so I think he deserves shouting. That 2-game stretch he went on was absolutely unbelievable. I think I'm just going to refer to fantasy points because that's the only... Well, one game he had 6 touchdowns, one game he had 4. and then probably like 850 total yards or something. Just absolutely crazy. But it was super special to watch. But he's kind of toned it down recently. But the most impressive thing with him is how good the Bills are. Since Stephon left, he's adapted so well, and he deserves a ton of praise. He was getting a little overrated there, I would say, last season, but now he's cemented himself. Yeah. He's proved why he was being rated so high. And then I would say once the Bills get an X receiver, but I know we talked about this earlier in the season on one of our episodes. They don't need an X receiver, and Josh Allen, he works better when he's not trying to force the ball to one receiver. Like Stephon Diggs, he was trying to force it. When they were having chemistry problems at the end of last year, he was trying to force it to him, and it just wasn't working. But now with the committee they have there, Shakir, Cooper, Coleman, James Cook out of the backfield, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, just working so well. And he's not trying to force the ball to any of them. It's kind of annoying for fantasy managers. But that's, like, he's just done so well. And we usually don't see that type of offense work, but it's really worked out with Joe Brady and Sean McDermott.
Okay, so just speaking first off on the voter fatigue stuff, yeah, it's definitely very real because as much as, like, I'm not even talking just on a football talent standpoint, but just the names of football, there's a big three, and it's Josh Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes. And, I think Joe Burrow is just as talented, if not more at sometimes, but just, like, off their names, that's the big three. And he's the only one out of those three that hasn't won an MVP yet, and he's having such a phenomenal season with the Bills team that's so good, the record-wise. But
what did you say?
I said, like, out of him, Mahomes, and Lamar, he's the only one that hasn't won.
I thought you were talking about him and
yeah,
Allen.
But, yeah, the Bills team, they're, on paper, like, the offense isn't even good. Like Peter said, there's no number one receiver and no true number one receiver. Like, Amari Cooper has the talent to be that, but, he's kind of regressing now. He had that insane catch, the touchdown. But getting off topic here. So Josh Allen is working with not as much as Lamar or Joe Burrow, and he's getting it done at a higher level because they're winning more games. And part of that's also on the defense and the coaching, but Josh Allen kind of is just the one guy for this offense. And for me, he is the most talented quarterback in the NFL right now at this point in time. Lamar, we can watch his games like Peter said, and that touchdown was insane, and he's so athletic, and he's become such a great passer inside and outside the pocket now. But Josh Allen, just talent-wise, do you see the throws he's making cross-body from hash to hash? It's insane. And yeah, Josh Allen, he's, to me, the most talented quarterback in the NFL. So this season, statistically, it depends on what perspective you're taking on the MVP conversation, because if we're talking statistics, it's Lamar. If we're talking like who's actually the most valuable person on their team, who contributes the most to their team, it's Joe Burrow. But yeah, and so Josh Allen doesn't check either of those boxes. But the reason why I'm still making the argument for Josh Allen, even though it's so heavily leaning towards Lamar right now, and I don't even know if I fully agree with Josh Allen being the MVP, but I'm just making this argument just to kind of back Josh Allen. The team record really matters, and the Ravens haven't clinched the AFC North yet, right?
No. So
if they do win the AFC North, I think Lamar does win the MVP, because obviously a big part of these accolades is like how well your team performs. So Joe Burrow is like not in the race really, but Josh Allen, if they don't win the AFC North, it should go to Josh Allen. And the Bills are second in the AFC. He's single-handedly making this a top 2 offense in the NFL. I only say not top 1 because the Lions are just insane. And their defense has regressed a ton, and it's really just him. So he's not checking either of the boxes that I said, but he's second in both. And I would say, so for the most contributing part of their team, I would say Lamar's third out of those three. And for the statistics one, I would say, actually probably Josh Allen would be third for that. But I just think with the combining all things together, all components, team record, contribution to the team, and just like talent and eye test, Josh Allen probably would have, if you combined all the scores together, Josh Allen would probably have the highest one in my opinion.
Yeah.
So there's a big case for Josh Allen this season, but it probably should go to Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
So
one more thing I want to say before we're probably just going to wrap it up on a little Heisman talk and push the other stuff to the next episode. But one more thing I want to say is the Ravens and the stuff that they have done this offseason, signing Derrick Henry, it's going to push them over the hump. I'm telling you, I think this is the year they go to the Super Bowl. They beat Patrick Mahomes. From what I've seen in the playoffs with Lamar before, he starts thinking he has to be Superman. He's the MVP. He has to do everything. But now when you have Derrick Henry, a guy who's rushed for almost 2,000 yards this season, which would make him a two-time 2,000-yard rushing, I think he needs like 200 yards. He's definitely not going to get that. But having that makes you so good. And we've seen how it has elevated Lamar's play even from last year's MVP season. So, yeah, I think this is the Ravens' year in the playoffs. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. And then the last part we're going to talk about is the Heisman. We're probably going to be a shorter conversation, but Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty, we're not going to look at the college football playoff and what happened, and I don't think it was Genty's fault. They were just stacking 9 in the box.
Yeah.
And with Penn State's defensive line, no running back would have anything.
Yeah, anyone who thinks Jeanty that said anything about him is an idiot, because he didn't even play bad either. He still had 100 yards. I mean, the fumbles were the only bad part, but still.
Yeah, but Travis Hunter, I was super pro Jeanty before, and I still think he deserves it. I still think he deserved it, but Hunter had a really good season, and he's so impactful to his team. People are really discrediting him as a receiver, and I don't know. A lot of it is kind of, I guess, hate, which we've been seeing that's happening recently with his personal life. But just kind of like haters spewing nonsense on the internet. But he's so impactful to his team, and he's so good as a receiver. Watching that bowl game even, and then watching their last Big 12 game, he's just so explosive. And then as a corner, he's absolutely shut down. So being top 5 in both positions, you can't say he got robbed. Nobody got robbed in this race, even though Jeanty had 2,500 yards. Any other year, he's the MVP. He's the for sure Heisman. But when you have a generational guy like this, you just can't.
Yeah, it's always just been Hunter for me. I mean, not always, because when Jeanty was on pace to break the record, like at the start of the season, and Hunter was kind of quiet, it was easily Jeanty, but then I didn't think he would be able to keep up the pace, and he didn't really. And Hunter really, he brought it up, his play level and his stats and stuff. And I mean, just looking at even just the defensive side of his positions, like him playing cornerback, he was a top 2 cornerback in college football this year. I know he's in the Big 12 on Colorado, but quarterbacks did not throw to him at all. And I remember seeing this guy who was hating on him because of his tackle numbers, but you have to understand, that's so stupid. If you're not making tackles, that means you're not getting thrown to. So he didn't even have tackles. Actually, low tackles for a corner is a good stat. So I don't know what that was about, but his lockdown rate, he had, I think, the lowest passer rating allowed for cornerbacks in college football last year. He didn't get thrown to at all. And then on the wide receiver side of the ball, such a freak athlete making big-time plays. His hands are insane.
So explosive.
His route running is actually really refined, and just his speed, you can't guard him at all. He knows what he's doing, how to read coverages, how to sit down in pockets of space, and just him and Shadur have also really good connection. So you can't see somebody who's elite, top 3 even, at both sides of the ball and not give them the Heisman. That's insane. Never seen. It's not even seen before that somebody's been like top 20 on both sides of the ball, but he's been top 3 on both sides of the ball, and I'm so curious to see how he does in the NFL. I really think he's going to do well. A lot of people think he's going to be a bust because he's pretty undersized, playing both sides of the ball in the NFL. It's not really going to hold up. I disagree. He might not be able to play both sides in the NFL, but whichever side he does pick, he's going to be elite. So he's going to be a top 3 pick, number 1 maybe, unless the draft order is not set. But if it's the Patriots, we can talk about this in the future mock draft episode, but I think they should trade down. But yeah, Travis Hunter deserved it.
Okay, that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah.
Make sure to follow us on social media, all that good stuff.
Thank you so much.